Are you sure you know what real cannons from the past look like? What you see in museums might not be weapons at all. They might be evidence of an industrial civilization erased from history. The official story tells us these giant bronze cannons were built to break castle walls during the 15th to 17th centuries. But they never explain why a weapon weighing 50 tons has no aiming device. They don't tell you that hidden inside the bronze shell is a steel framework, something that makes absolutely no sense if this were truly a weapon. And they certainly don't mention that when someone tried to fire one of these in the 19th century, it exploded. Picture yourself standing before a metal machine as tall as a house, heavier than 20 elephants, with no way to move it on a battlefield, no way to aim it accurately, and each reload taking an entire day. Is this the weapon any sane general would choose? Or is this something completely different, something we've been mistaken about for hundreds of years? Because if you look closer, if you stop and ask questions, you'll see rust staining red from metal that should never rust. You'll see design features identical to modern industrial machinery. And you'll realize a terrifying truth. History has lied to us about the real purpose of these machines. So what are they really? Why has the truth been hidden? And if they lied about this, how many other truths are buried? In this video, I'll show you the evidence, piece by piece. And trust me, after you watch this, you'll never look at a museum the same way again. Let's start with what we're told. According to textbooks and museums, these massive bronze cannons were created between the 15th and 17th centuries. They're called bombards, siege weapons designed to destroy fortress walls. The method of use is described like this. Dig a large pit, place the cannon inside with the barrel pointing toward the enemy walls, load gunpowder and stone balls, then fire. Their enormous weight, we're told, was necessary to absorb the recoil when firing. That's the story we've been taught. Clean, simple, logical. But let's think about this practically. A cannon weighing 50 tons in an era with no tractors, no paved roads, only horses and oxen. To move 50 tons, you'd need at least 300 to 400 horses pulling together. You'd need an army of hundreds of men just to control the rope systems. You'd need weeks just to travel a few kilometers over hilly terrain. The question is, why would any sane general choose one immovable giant cannon over 50 smaller cannons that are 100 times more flexible? No military manual explains this. No strategic text justifies it. And here's the second contradiction. Look closely at these cannons. You won't find any sighting mechanisms. No front sight, no rear sight, no angle measurement tools. Completely bare. Even ancient catapults had systems to adjust firing angles. Each shot consumed hundreds of kilograms of gunpowder, extremely expensive and rare. Reloading took hours, yet they fired without aiming? This isn't a weapon. This is something entirely different. Why would a weapon supposedly decisive in warfare be designed so illogically? Why is there no document from that era describing in detail how they were used in actual combat? Why, when someone tried to fire one in the 19th century, did it explode instead of working properly? Why is there a steel frame hidden inside the bronze shell? Something completely meaningless if this were a weapon. All these questions point to one conclusion. The official version is hiding something.
Now let's begin the real investigation. We're going to examine the evidence methodically, like detectives at a crime scene. And what we find will completely shatter the official narrative. Evidence 1. Two completely opposite types of cannons. When you study artillery museums carefully, you discover something strange. There are two types of cannons that are completely different, yet they existed at the same time. The first type, advanced steel cannons. These have rifled barrels that spin the projectile to increase accuracy, breech-loading mechanisms instead of muzzle loading, and sophisticated sighting systems. These weapons are centuries ahead of their supposed time period. The second type, giant bronze monsters. Heavy, clumsy, unable to aim, unable to move, looking primitive and ancient. How can two completely opposite technologies exist simultaneously? History tells us technology evolves from crude to sophisticated. But here, the sophisticated and the crude stand side by side. This isn't evolution. This is evidence of two different civilizations. The advanced steel cannons? Those make sense. They're real weapons, though surprisingly advanced. But the bronze giants? They're the real mystery. And it's these enigmatic monsters we need to understand. Evidence 2. Rust stains, the betrayal of metal. Now I'll show you the most important evidence. Bronze never rusts. This is basic chemistry. Bronze can oxidize and develop a patina, but it will never produce red-brown rust stains like iron. But look at these bronze cannons. From the rear section, red rust stains flow down. When you place a magnet near them, it sticks firmly. This means only one thing. Inside the bronze shell, there's a steel framework. Closer analysis reveals this consists of 3 to 4 steel rods with square or rectangular cross-sections cast directly into the bronze during the pour. Why would they do this?
The official explanation says it's for strength, but this is completely illogical from an engineering standpoint. Steel is more expensive and stronger than bronze by far. If they had enough steel to create a framework, why not cast the entire weapon in steel? It would be simpler, more reliable, more effective. Moreover, when two different metals contact each other in moisture, they create a galvanic cell that dramatically accelerates corrosion. The steel hidden inside is doomed to slow but certain destruction. As iron rusts, it expands in volume, creating enormous internal pressure on the surrounding bronze. Over time, this inevitably leads to microcracks. Water seeps into these cracks, and when it freezes, it tears the bronze apart from the inside. This means the creators deliberately built a self-destruct mechanism. No weaponsmith creating an item on which lives and battle outcomes depend would ever do such a thing. A weapon must be supremely reliable. Unless, from the beginning, this wasn't a weapon at all. Evidence 3. Absurd military design. Let's analyze the construction of these giants from an engineering perspective. When a cannon fires, maximum pressure occurs at the breech, the rear part of the barrel. Therefore, it must always be the strongest and thickest part. Every cannon in history follows this rule. But what do we see in these super cannons? The barrel walls have almost the same thickness along their entire length. From an engineer's perspective, this is a fatal design flaw. Such a weapon simply isn't built to withstand the colossal pressure of a shot at its rear. And history has proven this fact. In the 19th century, when they decided to fire a ceremonial shot from a similar ancient weapon in honor of a sultan's visit, it cracked. It burst apart. This wasn't the result of wear or metal fatigue. This was the predictable outcome of trying to use an object for a purpose it was never designed for. A structure with uniform wall thickness at such an enormous caliber is physically incapable of withstanding the pressure of gunpowder gases needed to propel a heavy projectile. It was never intended to. And then there are the decorative details. Many of these cannons have ornate cast elements, dolphin-shaped handles, and a strange lever with a knob at the very rear.
This feature is completely non-functional. It's impossible to lift or turn a multi-ton barrel with it. It provides no leverage whatsoever. Interestingly, In later eras, during the 18th and 19th centuries, military engineers were clearly puzzled by this feature too. They tried to modernize it, sometimes drilling a hole through it for a rope to restrain recoil, or cutting threads and inserting adjustment screws for vertical aiming. But these were just attempts to adapt an initially incomprehensible element whose true purpose had been lost. Evidence 4. Industrial architecture, mills, and kilns. Now, forget the word cannon. Look at these objects as an industrial engineer would. What do you see? A large hollow cylinder with thick walls, capable of withstanding high temperatures or great pressure. In modern industry, we have 3 types of equipment exactly like this. First, ball mills. These are large rotating cylinders filled with steel or stone balls to grind ore or raw materials. The stone and iron spheres museums call cannonballs, those are grinding media. The small hole at the rear they call a touch hole. That's the discharge outlet for finished product after grinding. Second, rotating kilns for lime or cement. These are large cylinders that rotate slowly at high temperatures to calcine limestone into building materials. If you look at the great castles and cathedrals built from the 15th to 17th centuries, you'll see they required enormous quantities of lime and cement. Without these industrial machines, those structures couldn't have been built. Third, high-pressure pump cylinders. This explains why there's a steel frame inside. Bronze resists corrosion well, but isn't strong enough to withstand continuous high pressure. Steel is strong, but rests easily. The solution? Create a steel load-bearing frame, then coat it with bronze to prevent corrosion. This is advanced engineering, completely logical for an industrial pump. Evidence 5. The repeating pattern. And here's the most frightening part. This phenomenon doesn't occur in just one place. From Russia to India, from Turkey to Western Europe, everywhere you find these giant machines, identical to each other. All are called cannon, all share the same characteristics, too heavy, unable to aim, steel frame inside, stone balls included. And all are located in fortresses and ancient citadels, places that once were industrial centers. This isn't coincidence. This is a global pattern.
So what happened? Let me propose a hypothesis. From the 15th century to the early 19th century, there existed a civilization with an industrial capacity far higher than what history records. They built large factories to produce building materials, smelt metals, and process ore. These giant machines were the hearts of those factories. Then, a major event occurred. Perhaps a global war, perhaps a natural catastrophe, perhaps the collapse of a power system. That civilization vanished. When the next generation found these ruins, they didn't understand what they were. They only saw large metal cylinders and associated them with the only weapon they knew, cannons. And from that point, history was rewritten. Why this hypothesis explains everything. This hypothesis solves many things the official version cannot explain. It explains why there are 2 opposite types of cannons. One type is real weapons, the other is industrial machinery mistaken for weapons. It explains why there's a steel frame inside. It's structural engineering for load-bearing machinery. It explains why there's no sighting devices, because they didn't need to aim, they only needed to rotate or stand still. It explains why they explode when test-fired, because they were never designed to contain exploding gunpowder. And most importantly, it explains why massive structures like castles, cathedrals, and giant stone bridges appeared simultaneously during the same period. Because there was a powerful industry producing materials for them. And if you expand your vision, you'll see this trace everywhere.
In India, there are giant cannons weighing over 20 tons with barrel diameters nearly 1 meter wide. The Jivana cannon at Jair Fort, the Mallige Maidan in Bijapur. These monsters would be completely useless as weapons, but make perfect sense as industrial equipment. In Turkey, the Dardanelles gun with a design identical to industrial kilns. In Russia, the Artillery Museum in St. Petersburg houses dozens of specimens with the same characteristics. All from the same time period, all following the same pattern. These aren't isolated cases. This is evidence of a global industrial production system that once existed and was then erased from historical memory. There are several possibilities. Perhaps a catastrophic war that destroyed infrastructure and killed those who understood the technology. Perhaps a series of natural disasters, floods, earthquakes, climate shifts that wiped out populations and buried knowledge. Perhaps a deliberate reset, a restructuring of civilization by forces we don't fully understand. I'm not here to give you one definitive answer. I'm here to show you that the official answer doesn't hold up. What matters is this: something happened, something big enough to erase an entire industrial civilization from memory. Something powerful enough to make us forget our own past. And when the survivors emerged from whatever chaos occurred, they looked at these machines and invented a new story. A story about weapons. A story about primitive warfare. A story that kept them from asking the real questions. Why would they do this? Why rewrite history? Maybe because remembering the truth was too painful. Maybe because those in power benefited from a population that didn't know what came before. Maybe because the truth would challenge everything the new order was built upon. Or maybe, just maybe, because we're not supposed to remember.
But the bigger question isn't what these machines were used for. The bigger question is, why was history rewritten? If a civilization this advanced once existed, why has every trace of it been erased? Why are we taught that our ancestors were primitive people who only knew war and destruction? Is it possible that someone wants us to believe we came from savagery, rather than from a higher civilization? There's a more frightening possibility. Perhaps we're living in a repeating cycle. Perhaps civilizations rise, reach their peak, collapse, and then start over from the beginning. And each time there's a reset, history is rewritten so the new generation doesn't know the truth. Think about it. If this has happened before, if advanced societies have been wiped out and forgotten multiple times, what does that say about the nature of our world? It suggests this world isn't a place of rest. It's not our final destination. It's a testing ground, a place designed to examine who will awaken, who will question, and who will continue believing whatever they're told. Every catastrophe, every reset, every buried truth isn't random chaos. It's part of the mechanism, part of the test. And the question you face isn't just about cannons or industrial machines or lost civilizations. The question is about you, about how you choose to see reality. History isn't just about the past. History shapes how you understand the present and imagine the future. If you believe humanity started from nothing and slowly climbed toward progress, then you see the world one way. You trust the system, you trust the narrative, you believe we're moving forward. But if you realize we might have fallen from something greater, if you see evidence that knowledge has been deliberately hidden, then everything changes. You start to question not just history, but power. Not just the past, but the present. Not just what you were taught, but who taught it and why. This isn't comfortable. Awakening never is. It's easier to accept this safe version of history where everything's explained and packaged neatly. It's harder to walk the path of questioning, where every answer leads to 10 new questions. But here's the truth they don't want you to know. The discomfort you feel when questioning is a sign you're getting closer to something real.
The confusion, the doubt, the sense that everything you believed might be wrong, that's not weakness. That's the beginning of clarity.
So why does any of this matter? Why should you care about old machines in museums? Because if they lied about this, what else have they lied about? If an entire industrial civilization can be erased and replaced with a story about primitive warfare, what other truths have been buried? How you live your life, what you value, what you fear, what you hope for, all of it is shaped by the story you believe about where we came from and where we're going. And if that story is false, then maybe the life you're living isn't the one you're meant for. Maybe you're capable of more than you've been told. Maybe the world is stranger and more magnificent than the small box they've tried to keep you in. This investigation into canons that aren't canons is really an investigation into something much deeper: the nature of reality itself and your place within it. Are you just a product of random evolution, slowly crawling out of the mud? Or are you the descendant of something far greater, living in the ruins of a world you've forgotten? The answer changes everything. We started with a simple question: why are these canons so illogical? Through our investigation, we discovered the steel frame inside the bronze shell, the design incompatible with weaponry, and the stone balls that aren't projectiles. From there, we realized they aren't cannons at all. They're industrial machinery. And finally, we saw a bigger picture: a civilization erased, a history rewritten, and a truth deliberately hidden. All of it began with simply stopping and asking questions. I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm only asking you to see for yourself. Go to a museum. Look at the rust stains. Try to imagine moving 50 tons with horses. Try to picture aiming a weapon with no sights. Try to explain why a weaponsmith would build a self-destructing cannon. Ask yourself, does this make sense? Don't accept anything as self-evident. Not from me, not from textbooks, not from anyone. Develop the habit of constructive doubt. That's how you find truth. Because the moment you stop questioning is the moment you become a prisoner of someone else's narrative. This video is just one thread in a much larger tapestry. These machines point to an industrial past we've forgotten. But they're not alone. Across the world, there are buildings that don't match their supposed construction dates, technologies that appear too early in history, population records that don't add up, events that contradict the official timeline. Each one is a crack in the facade. Each one is a clue. And when you put them all together, a very different picture of our past emerges. A picture that suggests we've been living in the aftermath of something enormous, something we're not supposed to remember.
The question is, do you want to keep digging? Do you want to see how deep this goes? Or do you want to go back to sleep, accepting the comfortable story you've been given? Here's what I need you to understand. You're not just a passive observer watching a video. You're part of this investigation. Every person who sees this evidence and starts asking questions is another crack in the wall of deception. The system that rewrote history relies on people not looking too closely, not asking uncomfortable questions, not connecting the dots. But you're looking, you're asking, you're connecting. And that's dangerous to them. That's powerful for you. If this video made you think, share it so others have the same opportunity. If you want to continue this journey into the hidden truths of history, subscribe and turn on notifications. Because what we've uncovered today is just the beginning. And most importantly, leave a comment and tell me, what do you think of this hypothesis? What other contradictions have you noticed in history?
What questions have you always wondered about, but never dared to ask? Because this isn't just my investigation, it's ours. Together, we'll pull back the curtain. Together, we'll reclaim what was taken from us. The truth about who we are. The truth about where we came from. The truth about what we're capable of. They tried to bury it, but you can't bury truth forever. Eventually, it bleeds through, like rust through bronze.